This is the first of the double trouble Royal Enfield 500 bullets that I attempted to test ride yesterday, and I barely got to the other side of the village before I had to turn around and limp home. And this is why. Now, these fuel taps, they're absolute rubbish. Look at this one, there's plenty of fuel in the tank, and I actually took this tap off the other day because it was doing this, and thought I took it all apart and blew it through and everything, and I thought I'd fixed it. But look at this, fuel on. I've got the pipe to the carburettor removed, obviously. That is the fuel on, and that is reserve. Pathetic. No wonder the bike didn't want to run when I opened the throttle and seemed to need the choke all the time. So I'm going to get the tap out yet again and try and do something about it. Even if it's possible, I might even use a drill and enlarge the passageways through it. But these taps are complete crap, and they have actually, I think, been responsible sometimes, in some cases, for whole pistons, especially in bullet engines that have been tuned. And when you've got a high compression piston in there and you ported the head, put a big carburettor on it and perhaps some sporty cams, and then giving it fuel flow like that, you're asking for problems. Anyway, that's not even adequate for one in standard tune, so I'm going to do what I can about it. Hopefully I'll be able to deal with it, otherwise I'm going to have to fit another fuel tap on it. But I'll go in there and have a look, see what I can get, and if I can get it sorted, which I probably will, we'll have another trial run on it, another test ride fairly shortly, I hope. Right, apologies to those who don't like my shaky camera work when I'm not using the tripod, but in this instance there isn't much point in setting up because it's only going to be a quick one. But I've got this fuel tap off. Now, I've worked on similar ones to this before now, and see the little rubber disc or diaphragm in there. Now, in some of them I've improved the flow through them by carefully enlarging those holes to let more fuel through, but as you can see in the case of this rubber disc, the holes in it are as big as the holes through the aluminium bodywork anyway, so they're not, the rubber disc isn't restricting their flow. But see the rubber seating there, that's where the little screw-on filter on the bottom of the tap screws up against, and you can see the face of it there. That face we're looking at, as it screws in, presses on that rubber in there, and that rubber in there, as it is, before it gets compressed and squashed, is almost completely covering the fuel passageway. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit shaky. I'm just going to get a screwdriver and prise this rubber ring out, so bear with me a sec. Have a look at the foot of the centre stand a minute. Right, that little sort of squarish opening there is where the petrol gets through from either on or reserve via that disc and the way the tap works, and that square opening feeds the outlet to the carburettor pipe. But when that rubber disc is in place, the rubber seal, like I say, is probably covering at least 2/3 of that opening, if not more, by the time it gets compressed by the little filter thing being screwed in. So I'm going to try and do away with that and fit an O-ring and see if that'll work, and perhaps do the job without covering up that little opening quite so much, and I think that'll get us our fuel flow. But there are lots and lots of these fuel taps out there, and I know lots of people like to sort of thump and plod around on their bullets and go slowly and at low RPM and everything, and perhaps these types of taps are fine for chugging along at 30 miles an hour in top gear, but we've already seen how this one behaved when I tried to get out up the road on it yesterday. There's definitely no chance. You can move off rather smartly on a float bowl full of fuel, but that doesn't last long and the fuel level drops, and then you're struggling to get across the main road. So I'm going to deal with that, and we'll come back to it and hopefully have a look at the whatever amount of flow I can get through it fairly soon, and hopefully improve on it by quite a large margin, and then we'll go for another ride and see how the bike can behave and perform. Right, here's this Royal Enfield Bullet 500 again, and I've had the fuel tap off and all in bits, and I've replaced this rubber seal that I was talking about that fitted in between the body of the tap and this plastic screw-in filter. I've swapped it for a more suitable section O-ring, which doesn't cover that square opening quite so much where the fuel is going to pass through. And also, as well as that, inside the little filter element itself actually covers a little portion of that square opening, so between the two of them they had it more or less closed off. I've got perhaps about 1/4 gallon of fuel in there. I drained it out into this big jug and did what I had to do and then poured it back in, and I think we're probably just about to have to go on to reserve anyway, but I'll turn the fuel on now. Look at that now. Reserve, look at that. And just to make sure that we're getting the fuel all the way to the main jet, I'll put the fuel pipe back onto the tap. I've removed the little drain plug out the bottom of the float bowl, so we'll turn the fuel on again onto reserve. Let's see what comes through the carburettor. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. That is a very good flow. There's no point in me giving the back of the engine a good wash and killing the weeds with all his petrol, so I'll put that plug back in the bottom of the carburettor, and I'm going to get myself ready to go for a test ride on this, and I'm sure our problems will be solved and it'll run as it should. So watch these types of fuel tap. They are very, very prone to interrupting and restricting the flow of fuel to the carburettor that the engine needs, and sometimes the consequences can be quite catastrophic, unfortunately, with whole pistons possible if you're really unlucky, all for the sake of this little critter.